want to create content for our business that educates, entertains, and inspires. And hopefully, it reaches the right people, the folks who you're really dreaming up that will come across your work and truly become genuine followers, hopefully turning into opportunities for the business. Whether it's new sale or networking opportunity or an opportunity for awareness, breaking out from the noise and making that impact can feel impossible. But the truth is, it's actually more possible than you think if you take the time to strategize and make sure your audience knows who you are and what you stand for. You need an angle, a premise, a point of view, or as our next guest, Kristen, on the stream likes to call it, a touchstone. In a moment, she's going to break down in her own words what that means, but I'm going to take a quick, simple stab at visually explaining it to set us up. Okay, so imagine you have a big box of Legos. There's a bunch of bricks in there, and you're feeling inspired and ready to build something really cool. But first, you need to decide what you make. The inspiration can only take you so far. You also need to decide exactly what types of pieces to use, the colors, the general shape and size. So you pull out a manual for inspiration. And after some research, you're ready to go and feel that you have all the pieces you need and the angle you want to start building. Because to be honest, you can create all types of things with Legos. Ships, castles, cars, the list goes on and on. But the type of thing you want to create is specific. And sitting down to sit down and just create a Lego, you could just end up with something that everyone else has made or kind of getting stuck. So once you finally build the masterpiece, you follow another in the same theme because you've started to actually plan out a style and people are ready to see what you have next. And as a result of sitting down and thinking through that process, going through, making the research, you essentially created the foundation that you need to make more. In my opinion, these touchstone principles are like the ideas you pick up to build with your Lego bricks. They help you figure out what your podcast or content is going to be about, and they make sure it's interesting, fun, and makes people really like it. Just like when you build something awesome with your Lego, they are the ideas that eventually turn into the tools and systems that create amazing content and become the literal building blocks for your audience growth. Well, Kristen, how did I do? Welcome to the stream. Do you like my Lego analogy?
I love Legos. I have 3 kids and also a Lego collecting husband, so we're a very Lego-y family for sure.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning into the stream. We're doing something a little creative and different here. I really wanted to set up our conversation and give a very baseline, elementary level of what your theory of touchstone principles are. Because in a moment, we're going to talk about how to implement that for your specific business podcast or business content and why having those laid out is so important to make sure that the content not just exists, but really resonates and helps guide everything that you do. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you have the stage. Give us a quick 1-2, who you are and what inspired you to really dive into the touchstone principle concept, and we'll take it from there. So let's just start from the beginning.
Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Kristen Spencer, and I'm a business communication strategist. And basically what that means is, you know how when you have a hybrid car, it uses a battery and a gas tank? So
Yes.
I'm like the car, but instead of the battery and the gas tank, I'm marketing know-how and writing expertise. So I come from the book publishing world. I've also worked as a humanitarian worker, so I'm really good at reading people. And I help people build that foundation, like you were saying, so that they know who they are, what they do, and how those things combine wherever they show up to promote their business or, their podcast.
Yes, and the reason why I was so excited to bring you on today, Kristen, is because often when we get inspired to create anything, we just tend to want to start, and that's great. We want to encourage starting, but we also want to encourage iteration and reflection of that because often folks can get stuck. So, tell me from your experience with your clients and the work that you've done, where do most people get start in that process, or get stuck, sorry, rather in that process?
I totally knew what you meant. Yeah. So most people get stuck in this way. They're like, okay, I'm going to create a business or I'm going to create a podcast. Or if they have a business, I'm going to create a podcast to support my business, right? And they sit down and instead of thinking about what high value skills do I have? What values do I stand for? What are my non negotiables? And how do I want to show up in a purposeful way in the workplace? They're like, how am I going to get people to give me money? Like that's the first question they ask. And that question cannot be the first question because there are just way too many answers.
That's so true. We think of the ROI or the monetization of the content, which is relevant. Obviously, we all have bills to pay, but it's not going to be the first step in that journey of creating those lucrative pieces of content or experiences. So, tell me more, break it down in your words now. Okay. Let's say I am a podcaster, I want to start a business podcast. I have some concepts, but I need help working out what my touchstone principles are. So, let's kind of role play that. Where would we start?
Okay, so first I want to say that a touchstone principle is not the same thing as a mission statement because a lot of people get that confused. And a mission statement is really a list of actions that you're going to take. Like, we care about this, so we're doing this, and we want to make the world a better place. And that's cool. But mission statements are not really the same thing as a full identity. Oh, hi, Derek. I actually know Derek. Nice to see you. So it's not an identity. And what we want to see is that we're creating a touchstone principle, and that's built out of three really important Legos, let's say. Your major value, like your non negotiable value when it comes to what your high value skills are. And we'll dive into that a little bit more in a second because, like you said, the money piece is absolutely real, totally valid. The second thing is going to be your related strength because like for example, I'm in marketing, but I write. I'm a writer. Marketing can mean so many different things, but my strength, my core strength that I can perform in any situation is I can write myself out of a box, right? I can write my client out of like we are going to write them something that's going to give them clarity and confidence. And then the third thing is you need an actual pathway to connect those things because you have your value, you're non negotiable over here. You have your strength. How are they related? Because if they're not related, you don't have a business. And so, what I recommend for people to do if they haven't thought through this already is that they sit down and if they're making a podcast to support their business, they actually just want to put the podcast over here for a second and think, what is the major touchstone principle for my entire business? And then after that, you can say, okay, what is a unique way? And for me, I'm always thinking, what's a fun way? Because I like having fun. What's a fun way that I can show up for my audience in this space in a unique manner so that I stand out, so that people remember me? And when they're talking about me, they're like, hey, have you heard that lady's podcast who creates these touchstone principles in real time with people that she's never talked to about their business before? And they're like, no. And that's me. I'm the only one who does that.
That's so valid. I want to dive into that just a bit further because you said something important. You said if you just started a podcast about marketing, then that means so many things. Marketing now, especially in business, can mean content, it can mean paid ads, it can mean SEO, it can mean, gosh, like who even knows? AI, systems, processes. I mean, just saying, I want to make a business marketing podcast without a specific angle to it further than that is going to be very difficult in today's market, especially with the amount of content that's out there. So, in educating your clients about touchstone principles, we're not necessarily trying to tell them, oh, your idea is wrong. We're saying you're onto something, but let's iterate it further so
Yeah.
that it actually stands out. So, for your show and what you do and your content, let's talk about somewhat about your journey. You just went through a journey of really going through and looking at your own content and seeing, okay, how can we narrow this down a bit further? I think that might be a helpful example.
Yeah, so there's a really popular book in the business world right now. It's called 10x is Easier Than 2x, and it's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And so I started reading that book about a year ago, and then I was really, I feel like it was an opportunity that I was able to go through a program with Dr. Benjamin Hardy in the last 2 months of 2023 and really dial in on what my 20% is, because we all know the 80/20 principle, the Pareto principle, where most of our results are coming from 20% of the work that we do. And the truth is, like in 10x is easier than 2x, what they say is, but the 80% makes us feel comfortable. So we keep doing it, even though we know it's not really helping us as much as it should be. And so I went through a really structured way of stripping away that 80%, which was painful and uncomfortable, but has really helped me focus on what it is that I'm doing in my space and to get super clear on that. And really, the only way that we can do that is to be in communication with others, but not just anyone, right? Like, I love my Mima. She's the best. She is the best Mima a girl could ask for. But I'm not going to ask her which 80% of my business I should get rid of, because anything that I tell her about destroying inside of my business is going to make her super nervous. So I'm not going to ask her advice about that. If I want to know how to make the best biscuits and gravy ever, that's who I'm going to go to.
That's so valid. I want to dive into that too, because sometimes when we are going through that, albeit painful process of trying to strip down what it is we want to create, who our audience is, and find them, it can feel lonely. It can feel a little, we can get stuck in our own heads, right? So rather than just asking everyone, like you said, I think really maybe reaching out to others that you look up to within that niche and partnering with them and just asking them a simple question like, hey, I kind of have this idea. Is this something that would resonate with your audience as well too? Because I'm thinking to kind of take this a different angle, but I just wanted to make sure. But if I ask my mom, for example, like, hey, I want to make B2B content and focus on storytelling and, coaching hosts and guests, she'd be like, what? Like, why don't you just interview people like the Howard Stern show or whatever? Like, I don't get it. You know what I mean? So that's relevant because it can take you off of your path if you're asking the wrong people or if you're creating for the wrong purpose. When what I mean by that is if you're looking at another trend and you're creating and trying to mimic that just because it seems like it works for someone else, it may not work for you because deep down that's not what your core is, right? So I want to dive into that where we're saying, okay, touchstone principles are different than your mission, but they kind of combine and they help bring the rest of it to light. So yeah, let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so I actually have an example that I like to use because the idea of a touchstone principle is pretty abstract. I have my little touchstone principle right here. This is my little beach rock from Athens, Greece. And a touchstone is an old school way of testing metals, actually. So they used to scrape silver and gold across a stone to tell what the quality was. And it also means something that is a reminder for you. So I have this rock on my desk, and when I touch it, I remember that my goal for my company is that we're going to help people get paid what they deserve to do more of what they love to make the world a better place. So we only work with people who are empathetic, who are kind, who have a direction that is going to improve humanity, whether that means they're teaching someone to play a guitar for the first time or helping someone find a co-packer so they can expand their food business, right? So it's an agnostic approach, what we do, but a touchstone principle helps us make those decisions quicker. Is this client a good fit? Yes or no? Is this a marketing strategy we want to try? Yes or no? Will this podcast fit in and serve in our 20% of what we're trying to do? Yes or no? And the touchstone principle tells us that. So here's the example. Um, Women Ignite helps professional women maintain authenticity while advancing in their careers and supporting other women through insightful coaching and emotional support. So the goal is to help professional women maintain authenticity, which is so difficult because of the ambition tax and all the ambition penalty, I should say, and the pink tax and all of those things. But also what while they're doing what? While they're advancing in their careers, and then how? Supporting women through insightful coaching and emotional support. So if someone comes along and they say, "Hey, Google wants to hire you to work with this giant panel of employees," and they're like 80% of them are men. As the Women Ignite company you're looking at, and you're like, that doesn't fit with our touchstone principle. So the answer is going to be no. Or maybe you decide as a group that you actually want to do it more because you know that the 20% of women on that team really need your help and they need you to show up and teach the men how to interact with them in a more professional, healthy way.
That's so profound because I'm gonna ask you again to repeat the first part of it. What we're helping with the struggle with the ambition, or to perform, like, say that one more time for me, because
So, Women Ignite helps professional women maintain authenticity while advancing their careers.
that's so specific, but that is impactful because it's not just we're helping women advance in their careers, we're helping women maintain that authenticity to feel that they are able to do that. That is such a great example of a touchstone principle because if I were to now make a podcast, I know what kind of guests I want to have on my show to
Yes.
help prove that point further or to help explain that point. Maybe I have psychologists on that talk about imposter syndrome, or a successful female entrepreneur that has a family that is trying to fit into both of those roles. Like, that paints a clear picture, and that's the great thing about what you're doing and what we're talking about is all of the questions that you are struggling with and answering for the content that you want to create, and who you want to have on the show, or what events you want to go to, or how you want to promote X, Y, and Z. They all start with this core idea right there.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't have this, it's going to be rough for a number of reasons. One, you aren't sure who you are when you show up, and that creates inconsistency. And inconsistency is the thing that feeds the monster of client mistrust. And we all know that's something we're dealing with, whether we're a podcast host, whether we are the CEO of a giant corporation. This is the biggest battle that we're fighting. And if we are not able to have that consistent foundation, just like the video explained, then we're in trouble and we're going to get lost along the way. And what I see a lot is people who don't have these foundations built, they end up in severe burnout because they aren't sure what to do, so they're trying to do everything.
This inspires me. I feel like if you're listening to this, you need to know this. If you need to find your audience, if you're having trouble finding your audience, you first have to find yourself. And
Mhm.
this is what you are talking about. It's sitting down and going, okay, what is the long term purpose of what I'm doing? Why am I doing it? But more, even deeper than that, not just from a mission statement, exactly what angle am I going to take to focus on and consistently show up for that? Because part of finding your audience and getting that consistency there is in that messaging. Like, here's a great example. Let's say today I'm talking to you about podcasting and content and strategy and business, and tomorrow I'm going to go on my live stream and talk to you about how to build a website, and then the next day I'm talking about like just AI and like all, like, it's just all over the place, right? How
Yeah.
am I going to find my one group? How am I going to really resonate and find the channels where those contents or themes make sense if I don't even know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, and also to that point, if you're spreading out what you're talking about so much, you won't gain the reputation of being an expert. And also the people that that you attract are going to be confused, and confused people are rough to work with. They're usually not happy because they don't know what they want, and it's not a fun experience or a productive experience. You can't deliver high quality work for someone when they don't know what they want and they're not sure what you do.
I also think that I want to speak to the side of that can be hard here, which is it can be hard to say no, right? So it can be hard. That process is painful, like you said earlier. Finding exactly the one thing that you want to show up for and be consistent in can feel like picking a favorite child to a creative or an entrepreneur, right? You're like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, like, but there is so much I love. Here's the thing though, pick it for a season, try it, test it. It doesn't have to be, you're not marrying it. Like, let's be in a long-term relationship for a couple years with this idea, and then once we've established that, let's see if it works. And the great thing is, if it doesn't, try again. Don't give up if you found that your touchstone principles or your premise for your podcast or whatever it is, if it hasn't worked, it's okay, so I just want to say that just from experience, because I feel like I've struggled with saying no, but lately I've learned that when I say no and I know what I'm saying no to, I'm actually saying yes to myself, yes to a better opportunity, yes to alignment, yes to consistency. I would love to hear what your experience is with that.
Yeah, so I'm a recovering people pleaser, and I grew up as like the most obedient child. And my parents, even now, they'll be like, "Well, you were so good." I was like, "Yeah, but not for any of the right reasons. Like, not because I wanted to respect and obey you, but because I wanted to avoid all these different things that could have happened if I didn't do what I knew you wanted me to do." And so it has been really hard for me to set boundaries in my business. And one of the things that I did learn was, okay, I'm not going to let everyone hire me. Also, as a podcast host, it is rough. I get emails every day from people who are like, "We love your podcast." I like hearing that. I want to keep getting those emails, but then they're like, "Here's why we would be a good guest." And I'm reading it and I'm like, "You're not a good guest for my audience." And I have to absolutely protect my audience. They're the ones that I have to care about first because they're coming to me with a specific need, and hopefully to hear about lots of fun geek things and maybe Star Wars jokes that I try to insert everywhere. But they're trusting me with their time. So if I show up with a guest who has nothing to say to them, then they're going to be bummed out. And also, I'm not doing a good service for that guest who came on and invested time in being on my show when they're not going to see any connections from it because my audience has no way to connect with them.
So let's dive into this. I want to kind of give a real example here. I'm going to pretend that I have made a podcast. It's for my business. I'm lost. I come to you and I'm like, Kristen, here's my problem. All right. I want to make content focused on helping other women in business better market their content. That's all I know. That's all I got. I come to you and I tell you that. Where does your brain go first? Let's kind of show the audience and work through it together.
Yeah. So my first question is, I want to know your story. Why are you so passionate about this? How did you get into it? And then once we talk about that, my brain is trained to go to the offer. What is your high value skill that you love doing? We're not going to talk about anything you don't like doing because there's no point in trying to get you to do that. And we're going to connect your story and what you love with that high value skill. And we're going to come up with a show that makes you super excited when you get out of bed in the morning to record, instead of the show that makes you want to go hide in your closet and pretend like you don't have to do it.
Right. If you don't love it, you won't do it. So why are you hurting yourself in the process of that? Right. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, that's the beauty of the content, is you have control over it. All right. Let's use my theater experience. Let's keep going on this character's journey here. All right. So my name is Kelly. All right. This is a fake person. Okay, guys, this is not real. So I'm Kelly. I've come to Kristen. I said, all right, yes. I want to help other women better market their content. My story is that I am a stay at home mom who has decided that I want to help other women who are other stay at home moms create content and help them better see that content so that they have the reach. They can actually reach people, right? And that content can go somewhere. And let's say I've successfully done that, and that's why I'm inspired to, and I've come to you and I've told you that.
Yeah. So I would say, okay, well, what was your biggest failure? People really get mad when I ask this question. Be like, what's your biggest failure?
Triggered. I'm triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
and be like, what was your biggest failure that turned into what you're doing now? And you would not believe the stories that people have when I ask this question. And then because of the specific answer, let's just say, Kelly, that you had to become a stay-at-home mom because your child had an autoimmune disease, right? Because that can happen. And so I would say, all right, so what did that journey look like to figuring out how to market yourself while you actually have the physical need of someone else on you, weighing on you? And that's one of the first things that we would talk about to figure out what your touchstone principles are, because there are other moms out there in that situation. And it's not just balancing being a mom, staying home, plus marketing. It's being a caretaker of a child and those very specific needs. And what lessons did you learn from being a caretaker that make you a better marketer? Because then you have that magic sauce. You have the personal investment, you have the results that you were able to get in that situation, which when people listen to podcasts, you know what they're listening for? They want hope.
They want hope, they want inspiration, they want to feel related to, they want to feel heard, and those things cannot be executed if you do not tie into the emotion of what it is you're doing. So, I love that you said that, and also shout out to Derek. He says, "Failure is my superpower." Love that mindset. Yes, and it really is, because everything that you have tried and have not succeeded at for whatever reason turns into another point in your story where hopefully you have that opportunity to connect with somebody else. So, and one more thing about this. So, here's what stood out to me about your example. When we are talking to Kelly, who is the mom, stay at home mom, who's built a successful business, now wants to teach other moms how to market and create content that has reach, right? You
Yeah.
could have taken the tactical approach. You could have started saying, "Oh, well, you should talk about Instagram and like the algorithm and like how to create said content." You didn't go there. You started way at the beginning with the emotion of what it is that person felt, how they did or did not achieve the thing, and then started to build that touchstone principle from there, which is every great story has emotion to it. You're not going to find an audience if your content is lifeless. And infusing emotion and finding that is so important. So let's do another quick example because I'm so hyped up on this right now. Okay. I'm just so excited. Okay. Let's say let's take it a little more let's take it more corporate. All right,
Okay.
my name is Kyle. I don't know what Kyle, guys, this is all example, so let's just not get in our feels about it. All right, let's say my name is Kyle, and for a really long time I worked at a corporate company. Okay, now I've decided after working at a corporate company as a marketer, I've started my own business and I want to take what I've learned from my corporate marketing experience to teach other folks about marketing and grow their business, right? That's all I got. I came to you. That's all I gave you, Kristen. My name's
Okay.
Kyle. That's all I know. Where are we starting?
So, first, I would want to know who you really are passionate about working with, because the way that we can interpret and filter corporate experience has to be treated carefully when we're dealing with like a solopreneur or something like that, right? Because I do corporate consulting. It's not the same. If I talk to you, read about your podcast, it is not the same as when I go advise a corporation who's making 300 million a year in revenue, right? So the situations are going to be different. So I want to know, Kyle, what are you really passionate about? Where do you want to show up every day? And what out of your high value skill can we take out and distill so that you can help those people that you're passionate about? And normally, when Kyle is sharing with me about the person he really wants to help, he's going to tell me what he's passionate about. There's going to be a story in there, and he's also going to be communicating to me what his strengths and weaknesses are. So I'm listening for all of that because I want to set Kyle up to succeed. And so I need to know all of that information. And then I'm processing it through my brain, which is my amazing, flesh computer, right?
We love your
And
brain.
we love the brain. And I'm thinking about people I know who need Kyle's help and what pain they're in right now so that Kyle can help them. and he's actually going through a painful situation, in that he's
Mm.
left his corporate job. Whether or not it was on good terms, that transition is still painful. So we can even channel that and create what I call emotional imagery, which is a term that I adapted from my life back in the literature world as a fiction editor. But so that we can mirror that emotion to the people who most need his help, who he most loves helping.
Hmm. Let's say I'm being a little, I'm lost, so I'm being a little difficult. I'm just saying, well, Kristen, like, I want to help people. Like, I just want to interview a bunch of people about marketing, and they're going to come on my show because I just want to make a podcast. I want to talk about marketing, and we're just gonna talk about it, and we're gonna talk about things that are great and things that aren't great, and just talk to a bunch of people that want to do that. Where do you help me get out of that thought process? How do we get unstuck
Yeah.
in the loop?
I mean, so what I would do is, one of the things that I do is I use storytelling, since I'm a storyteller. And I'll be like, okay, I understand that you want to be super vague about your podcast right now. And while I don't agree, I would love for you to help me with the story. Can you please tell me about the last person you helped and what you helped them with? Because that's going to zero in things for them, and they're going to realize, wait a minute, I don't want to talk about everything. I want to talk about these cool wins that I'm getting for people in their real life. And if they're so new that they don't have any wins yet, I'm going to make them go back. Okay, what in your corporate job did you do really well last? And let's talk about that project.
That's so important and helpful because it happens all the time. I have people that come to me and they're in that phase. They're just like, "Hey, like I just want to make a business podcast about marketing." And I'm like, "Well, tell me more." But the way you actually ask those questions are more helpful than me going, "Tell me more," right? You're saying, "What was the last person?" You said, "What was the last person that you helped well?" Or if you don't remember that in your last position, what was a win that you had? Like, kinda starting from there, right?
Right, because and I mean, that's when their faces light up, right? Because they're like,
Right.
I did something good. And you're like, yes, we want to keep that feeling going, but we can't do something good for you as you're starting in this podcast or business or whatever if you aren't sure who you are showing up as. And when you're showing up as marketing umbrella person, that's
Mhm.
impossible. There's too many things you could do. I would much rather listen to a show that's about marketing and fandoms, the Jeep and the rubber duck, right? Like, that sounds amazing. And that's the whole
Right,
thing. So
right,
someone
and
feel free to take that show. You can do it.
go ahead, free idea. I do want to kind of speak to that a little bit because there are a couple ways to go about it. You could be hyper niche and do super well with that, and but you could also, if you do, this is my opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong. If you want to have a general show, you need to have a unique twist to it in some way. So, for example, there's a show that I like to watch on YouTube. It's called Hot Ones. It's not a business show, but it's interviews. Okay, if you probably know what I'm talking about. There's this lovely set up here where this person is interviewing celebrities. Now, how many shows have we watched where one person is interviewing another celebrity about their life and their successes, their wins, their life journey, right? There's so many shows about that. Here's
Yeah.
what this person did different. They're eating hot wings, and
Right.
the hot wings get spicier and spicier, and the conversation, the questions get spicier as they go further, and it gets harder and harder to answer those questions, right? So,
Yeah.
here's a helpful bit. If you have a general idea that you do want to pursue, think about what the special, unique angle or twist to that story is to help find a way to differentiate it in that light, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on that, Kristen?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I was launching my podcast, people kept telling me what a horrible idea it was. They're like, wait, so you're going to do minimal research on this person. They're going to come on your show live, which is also streaming live, by the way, and you're going to, edit the episode and then put it out. And you are going to listen to them talk for about 15 minutes, and you're going to distill their whole business into one sentence. And I was like, yes, I am. And they're like, that's really risky. And I'm like, exactly. Wouldn't you want to listen to see if I'm going to be able to do it or not? And they were like,
Absolutely.
yes, yes, I want to know if you can do it. And if I fail, is that bad? No, it's still interesting, right? We all make mistakes and it humanizes me. So I really, and I love the idea of the hot wings because the hotter it is, the more carefully you have to choose your words because you can't say very many words.
Right, right. I had another idea that anyone can choose to steal because this requires cooking skills, and I'm not a great cook. So, I had an idea about when directors create stories, right? Sometimes they have to remove things from their movies, right? Like they have to chop it, right? There's something called director's cut or whatever, right? I had the idea for a podcast called The Chopping Block, where it's two people talking, like cooking and like, making cutting up things and talking about things that they had to remove from their content or their business strategy and how those things ended up helping them with their business. And they get to kind of lament about their things that they had to lose a little bit, and then eat, and then it's chopping, we're chopping it up, we're chopping up the talk, we're cooking, we're talking about it, right? So that's kind of a different analogy for the premise of, okay, if you have a general idea or a general topic, how do you humanize it? What's the way that you can make it feel the emotion of it? Because the emotion of me eating with someone or hanging out in somebody's kitchen or talking or whatever, like that's very real. That's very human. So it takes some of these more generalized high level concepts and takes the emotion back to one, right?
Yeah, and I would say, like, as informational as you wanna be, and information's great. I love information. I'm a writer. I'm a nonfiction writer, okay? But any information you have that can be connected to and increase the relatability through storytelling, and it has to be a strategic story. The story has to match the thing you're teaching, or else people are like, what just happened? Then you are increasing that point of human connection. And one of the best ways to do that is also through humor. So,
Yeah. Like I want to, yeah. Don't forget to be funny, guys. You can't be funny if you want. It's not all serious. Like it's not brain surgery here. Like it's content. Like let loose a little bit, you know?
yeah, and actually in Humor Seriously, which is a book that did not make me laugh out loud one single time, but it still endeared me to the authors proving their point. Even if you do not get the laugh, it builds trust that you even attempted humor as long as it's not inappropriate, right? Like, read the room.
Yeah, read the room and make sure, like, it's guys, this is streaming to LinkedIn, all right? You know what the audience is there. Like, let's be real, you know? Also, if humor isn't your thing, like maybe dry sarcasm or like, like whatever it is that is your thing, like you're saying look inward. Who are you as a person? Are
Yes.
you more serious? Are you funny? Are you casual? Are you very professional? Like take who you are, the essence of who you are, and assess that and write those words down, because most likely you're going to be able to find an audience that will better relate to who you are as a person. Like you don't want to have to put on a show. Like you are going to put on a show, but like it's not going to feel as natural, right?
Right. Well, and I would say, authenticity is like the word of the year for, the Merriam-Webster last year. And people are so tired of it. But I will say, when you show up as yourself, it's so much less exhausting and you're going to attract people who actually want to work with you. You're going to enjoy guests more as a podcast host because you're going to have people reaching out who heard your show and they liked what they heard. And that's you. That's not a character you put on, right? I'm not saying you don't have to get excited when you show up, right? I'm super introverted. Like most days, you'll find me writing in silence or reading on my couch next to my dog. But that doesn't mean that when I come here, I'm going to be subdued and quiet and not engage with the audience. Right? So you can make adjustments, but I'm still showing up as my authentic self. I'm just a little more excited than I naturally would be because I'm excited to be talking to you right now.
100%. So let's say I wanted to get out my workbook for a second here, and I wanted to kind of brainstorm the premise of what I'm doing. Okay. If someone has, okay, they've gotten to the point where they know who they are, they know their mission or their purpose or their long-term goal, right? And they kind of mapped out their little bubbles of what niches or places they want to speak to. What's the next step? What's the more next best step after that you would kind of take somebody through?
Like, what is the thing? What's your thing that you want to be known for? right? Like, let's, because who, no one's really known for marketing. That's too vague. So what is your thing that you want to be known for? And one of the best ways to figure this out is to ask yourself this question: what can I talk about all day long without having to do any research and still be super excited about it? Or if you're like, I don't really know what that is, what are you excited to learn about all day? And then tell to your significant other when they get home, and then they're like, this is too much information about red cars from 1970 or whatever.
Well, that's so true because for me, this is our live stream where we all kind of hang out and talk shop about, content or strategy or all of that. But for my podcast, my actual podcast, Bippity Boppity Business, that is the show where I could go to the cashier clerk at any grocery store and talk their ear off for God knows how long without any consent or reasoning about Disney and business and branding and storytelling and all those things. And some people may look at that podcast idea, Bippity Boppity Business, and think, oh, that's just a Disney podcast. She's just a girl who likes Disney. No, if you look at it a little deeper, you'll realize that I have done a couple things personally, in my opinion, with the show. One, I've identified a human baseline of connection. Me connecting with other people who have a love and passion for the Disney brand or related fandom esque topics, right?
Yeah.
Two, being able to to connect on that human level allows and opens up a more natural conversation based on the topics of branding and storytelling, immersive experiences, and all of that, right?
Right.
Three, what it also does is it creates an accessible way for someone to passively listen to the show and actually, hopefully, if I'm doing my job right, enjoy it through storytelling, enjoying it as if it was any other media YouTube outlet out there. Because the point is to differentiate the business podcasts from other business podcasts where they're very tactical and you feel like you have to turn your brain on to listen. This
Yeah.
show is supposed to be inspirational and it's supposed to have some educational value, but it's supposed to be a reprieve from the day-to-day content that one would consume about business and all of the things that we talked about, right? So I'm not shouting it out just to shout it out, but I really wanted to give that example because I feel like what you said was relevant. It should be something that someone can listen to through story and enjoy. Like, guys, they have to, it's still content. They have to enjoy it, you
Yes.
know?
It's entertainment. It's entertain. It's infotainment, right? That's what they call it at Disney. You have to give the information to them in an entertaining way if you want them to remember it. If you don't care about them remembering it, I don't understand why you're doing a podcast.
Yes, yes. If you don't want to be memorable, you just and that might not be intentional, but that can be what happens if your show is not positioned in a way where it connects those things. So another example would be sports, right? Sports is a I'm a theater kid, so I'm making it sound like a very generalized term, like, oh, do you like the sports? But what I'm trying to say is I know that that is a thing that is commonly shared between people that they enjoy and they like. So when you're looking at your content, when you're looking at your audience, you cannot only think about what your audience wants to learn, you need to think about who your audience is. What do they like to listen to? Where do they like to go? Really get into the mind of that individual and personify the content in a way that will relate to that person. Tell me about some of your experience with that.
Yeah, so I would say it's really funny that you bring that up because the step after establishing touchstone principles is to find unique purchasers. I don't use ideal client avatar because it can be exclusionary, but to find unique purchasers who share your values so that you can show up for them and you have the same values and you know that you're a good match. So you cannot have a successful venture in life, in business, wherever, if you don't understand what values you represent and who you're representing those values to, because there's just not going to be any connection. So, we've seen, I always like to use the case study of Coinbase. So, Coinbase got wrapped up in a lot of social issues. Not to say those social issues are not important, they definitely are, but they realized this is actually a distraction from what we want to do, which is financial. It has nothing to do with social issues. And so they created new touchstone principles and they invited anyone who didn't feel like they were a value match to leave the company. And they were able to grow an insane amount over the next 2 years because of that, because of strategic subtraction. And for people who are doing podcast hosting, or maybe they're small business owners, I can guarantee you that if I say problem client or problem guest, someone pops into your head right away. And the real problem is that there's a value mismatch there. So you're bringing someone on your show who doesn't actually resonate with the values of you or your audience, and that's a huge problem. So you have to be thinking about values. You have to be thinking about your touchstone principles and how the values that naturally pour out of that, if that makes sense. And then who resonates with this, and stay true to that.
And in a kind of more tactical way, too, it helps, for example, make decisions about, let's say you want to create an event, right? If you know who your audience is, let's say they enjoy sports. Maybe your show is a generalized business podcast, but you talk about how sports business was a thing and you use sports analogies, right? If you
Yeah,
have a meetup or an event, you know what you're doing. You know where your audience would want to go and sign up. We're going to some kind of sporting event, or we're doing, if you want to do a giveaway, you're not scratching your head and going, what kind of giveaway should we do? You know who that person is, and you know exactly what people would sign up for, right? So
exactly.
tell me more about what qualifies. You say you don't use ideal client, ideal purchaser. What are some qualifiers of what that would be, that to help identify that for somebody?
So unique purchasers is a whole thing that I could talk about for hours. I'm actually developing a whole program around it right now. But the reason why I've sort of gotten away from ideal client avatar is because it was created in the first place to make marketing firms' jobs easier. And that's not good for anybody but marketing firms. It's not good for their clients. And also, when you ask someone to create a demographic group, they're going to naturally select people that they're around all the time, which means that there are underserved communities that are left out of being served when they need that service. So, for a unique purchaser, what you're looking for is someone who has similar values, whose culture already has structures in it that support the kind of service that you're going to bring, and who has a personality fit for the service or product you're providing, not necessarily a personality fit for me, right? Because it could be, you don't want to just dive into working with people who are a total personality mismatch with you, but in general your offer is going to serve someone really well who might have this kind of personality profile. So you want to be thinking about that instead of who do I like working with, when you're trying to figure out who can I best serve. Because I think that's what a lot of business owners do. They're like, well, who do I want to work with? And then they create this demographic list for an imaginary person that probably doesn't even exist in this climate today, because ideal client avatars were developed forever ago. So a unique purchaser is just an updated twist on that, that's more inclusionary, that's more based on psychographics, which has to do with values and beliefs and personalities, as opposed to age, gender, societal influences and that kind of stuff.
Well, stereotypes too, and it happens. We tend to do that, but I have never really resonated personally with the idea of ideal client, because how do you know, okay, sure, this person is this age, they make this much money. Like, those assumptions, you're right. They may not be as relevant, but if you focus rather on psychographics instead of demographics, that's so interesting, because a lot of our intentions of or desires to want to act or buy are focused in something deeper or rooted in something deeper than us, right? So, for example, just to get personal and relatable here, I noticed that my desire to impulse buy usually happens when I'm stressed and I want to fix a problem. If I have a problem, that's when I want to go and buy. And what I mean for that is for my business. If in my business I'm struggling with something, I'm all of a sudden I'm Googling and I'm trying to find a way to buy something to fix it. Now, that's not the best way to go about it, just saying, okay? But it's something that I realized. But when I realized that, it turned on a light in my brain and it made me think, wow, my desire to act is rooted in something that I am emotionally experiencing, right? I am
Yeah.
being compelled to do so. Now, I am not the traditional demographic for my age. I'm 28 years old. I am a daughter of immigrants. I'm Middle Eastern. I run a six-figure business. Somebody that would look at me and how I sound and how I act may not think that that's the position that I'm in. I am proud of that, but I like what you said with psychographics. So, what are some emotions, the psychology that we want to appeal to? And I know it differs based on who that ideal purchaser is, but in general, we want to start thinking about to get to that point.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take a second to point out the fact that there are two different kinds of psychographics that people think about in the business world. One is called segmented psychographics, and giant corporations use it. And it's really expensive to do because the information that they need to get in order to do segmented psychographics it comes at a premium. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about general psychographics. So for people who are like, they hear the P word and they get really nervous, we're not talking about segmented psychographics. Don't worry. So general psychographics are really based on a person's belief system. So you have to think about, what are they predisposed to prefer as far as behavior? What are they predisposed to do when you give them the information that they need? For some people, so I always give this example. There's 5 different characteristic scales that I use to help people work through what kind of personality that their unique purchaser has based on psychographics. But on one of the 5 scales is nervousness. And I'm like, you might think nervousness is bad, but do you know who nervousness is perfect for? Insurance companies. They need someone who's a little nervous to invest with them, and they're going to have a lot easier time getting those yearly premiums and doing any like direct contact with them, because that person is tending toward nervousness. They want to know they're covered.
I love that. For anyone who's listening live right now, please chime in. We would love to kind of help you out, answer a question that you have for yourself. If you're trying to find your audience or really nail in on your messaging, like this is your chance to send us over a comment and have us help you with it like right now. So like freemium, like at a great, like Kristen's amazing and it's just such a great value, honestly. So I'm not trying to sell it, but I'm trying to encourage you and let you know that this is meant to be interactive. So we've talked a lot, we've given some concepts here, like to kind of summarize. We've talked about, what it is you want to do, why you want to do it, clarifying the why behind the buy and all of that. Because the point being is, if you don't know those things, you will never have that roadmap. You will never find that guide to be able to create long term and the way that you want. And that's what we want for you. We want for you to be able to create and develop what you need for yourself or your business for a long time so that it does benefit you, right? Like for me, I feel like something that I did a little bit ago with my podcast is I tried to change it because I tried to make it very specific to what I was hearing other people say you should do with a podcast or with a business podcast and all those shoulds and woulds and whatever. And what I found is I had people that I've never met before message me on LinkedIn and go, "Hey, I love your podcast, but like, what's happening?" And I didn't know. But like you said, like the when I confused them, that's what I heard from them. And that's what I'm trying to say is, when you find your audience, sometimes there are so many people that passively or silently consume your content that
Yes.
may not come out and just like tell you until either something exceptional happens or something confusing like I did happens as well too.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was hoping we would talk about your podcast a little bit today, because it's an example of what we're talking about. You know who you are. Also, we totally bonded over Disney. That was like, we
Yes.
talked about it for half an hour, I think.
Yes.
And that differentiates you. And someone who is into Disney, they're probably not into it a little bit. They're probably into it a lot, like both of us are.
A lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what happens. The Disney machine takes over, and you're like, "What? I can get pins and trade them with people. I can
Yes.
collect cards. I can watch cartoons and movies." It
Right,
just
right. No, but it's so true because I think what it is it's recognizing and accepting your own self, like being authentic, right? For the longest time, and I'm not sharing this to sound like woe is me. I'm sharing this because hopefully someone can resonate this with this. For the longest time, when I showed up to my business podcast, I felt like it wasn't businessy enough. I felt like, I wasn't the way that we see business podcasts presented, right? So I felt like I had to put on a facade or the stereotype, if you will, which is why I think, maybe ideal buyers can be a difficult thing or not so great thing mentally. But either way, to put on this facade of like, I am a business person with a deep voice and I'm serious. But guess what? It didn't work. And what happened instead is I stopped making content and I started being mad at myself for it. So, oh, we do have a lovely user who has shared a comment. So let's pull it up here. So, loving this talk and all of your thoughts. One of my challenges as a musician is that I have to push and evangelize and share my music in a world that is very oversaturated with folks doing the same thing. How do I get better at understanding and how can I tell a story that stands out? Such a great example. Kristen, go for it.
Okay, so first I'm going to say that you should read one of my writing coaching clients' books. His book is called This Book Shreds, and it's by Rob Spampanato. And he talks a lot about this in there. You should also check out his YouTube channel. It's called Rob's School of Music, and he interviews like amazing musicians who have gotten through to the other side of where you are, dear wonderful viewer. And they share how they did that. So there's a lot of great. I really like Rod Castro's story, actually, about playing for Beyonce and all that stuff. So I would say, though, that you need to lean into what makes you you. I'm also a singer songwriter, so I'm writing songs all the time. And the thing that makes my songs different is that they're about a middle aged plus size mom. How many songs have you heard like that? But how many middle aged plus size moms are there out in the world who are just trying to figure it out and they have a job and they have a bunch of kids and all that? So I I have my pulse on what's going on in the music industry because of my clients and because of my own experience. And I would say I'm so tired of hearing vague breakup songs. And that's actually one of the things, whether or not you love her or hate her, what everyone's talking about are Taylor Swift. Why are her songs so great? Because they're so specific that you know who she was talking about in which breakup song is playing.
Well,
People
yeah, and
ignore that.
I agree to that. Another song that recently popped off on TikTok was a very specific breakup song. And, I don't have personal experience in marketing and music and that end. But what resonated to me in this person's posts is that she talked about a breakup where after 20 years, she was married to the same individual, feeling unheard, and how hard it was to go from, you know, I am the mom, I am the identity, I am the wife to like, wow, 20 years later, I'm divorced and I'm broken up with, and these are the things that I experienced. Now, that very specific scenario is very relevant in today's world. And I think that story does stand out because it has an element to it deeper than just I love Carrie Underwood, but like, yeah, people cheat and people break up, but like, what happened? We're curious. We're
Well, that's
nosy
like
as people. We
Kelly
want the
Clarkson too.
details. Yeah.
She's like a detail giver, right? Like we really love the details, and that's also how we can differentiate ourselves in marketing and in the music industry. Like one of the things that you can do to make yourself stand out is I wrote this song, here's the story that goes with it. And any radio personality is going to want that over a song with no story, for sure.
We want the drama a little bit, y'all. I'm
We
not
want
gonna
to
lie.
know.
I am a Swiftie too, and I love the details. The way that also, I would argue that Taylor Swift is also one of the best marketers of all time. Okay.
She's so
Like,
great. Yeah.
we could do a whole segment, like kind of fan little stream
Yes,
on that separately and like hyper analyze that.
for
But
sure.
what you said is right. What she does is she takes something that this is touchstone principles, something that she personally experiences, something that she has gone through. She thinks about that experience, then she thinks about the emotion behind that experience, and then one step further, who is the potential listener that might resonate with that scenario, and then crafts a story. The difference
Yep.
between saying like, "Hey, I have a new song, check it out," and um, you're driving in a car and saying like, "Man, like I I just went through an entire like, you know, life awakening and I realized that I don't actually want to date anyone anymore. Maybe I want to be single forever and here's why and here's what happened to me." Like, guys, give us the story. We want the details. We're nosy. We love that stuff.
Well, and that's what makes it relatable because humanity is complex as a species. We have all these emotions, we have all these things, and music is a way for us to display that. And of course, like if I'm going to be super specific about telling a story, I would say utilize the bridge section of your song. And so many people are not doing bridges anymore. Like bridges are storytelling gold opportunity. Like make the bridge stand out from the rest of the song and make it like drill into the brains of the person who's listening.
I feel like if you're listening and you're resonating with any of this, you need to touch base with Kristen and ask more because listen, this is I'm interested. I need to know what you come up with later. So follow up with us and let us know. So thank you so much for that comment. We really appreciate it.
Definitely.
All
Keep
right.
going.
Keep going. That's the thing is keep going. You'll I always like to say, every experience that I go through, every mistake that I make is just another little plot twist to the story of life and that then we get more content out of it, right? So
That's
like
right.
if you're going something through something hard, just laugh it off and be like, okay, that's gonna be great content one day. I'm just kidding, but I'm also not a little bit. Um that's what I tell myself. Okay, so I think we might be out of time for our chat today. Clearly, Kristen and I could hang out for hours and talk about any of this stuff. So we don't want to inundate you with everything. But really, if we want to leave everyone with one big takeaway here, if they don't get anything out of this conversation, what's the one thing you want them to get out of it as they go about their day and leave us today?
I would say take your time and give yourself space to think about this because it's an important decision and everyone wants this instant gratification and rush rush rush. Having to make a quiet pivot after making this kind of mistake where you've pigeonholed yourself into something you don't like is painful and it doesn't need to happen. If you do end up needing to pivot, pivot loud so people understand what's happening, but take that initial time. I have a thinking chair. I sit in that chair and I don't do anything but think. And that's one of the best investments I've ever made.
Well, you heard it here first. Find yourself a thinking chair. No, that's not the takeaway. I didn't mean to undermine that. No, but it's I'm joking. No, but what I really mean is it's true. Like you have time. That's what I got out of that is breathe. You have time. Focus on what it is you want to do because the more you think about it and the more you reflect on it, the better it'll be later. And I mean, there's so many experience examples of people who took a very long time, but they finally found it and then they did it. At any point in your career, you can sit down and you can go through this process and you can find your audience and you can create. It's never too late, basically. So hopefully we reignited a little fire in you. Shout out reignite me. And if you have any questions on really diving into what your touchstone principles are or really working through this messaging, Kristen, how can folks best connect with you?
So I hang out on LinkedIn. I really only hang out on LinkedIn. And then also if you want to check out our website, you can go to litsym.com, litsym.com.
Awesome, everyone. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us and being our content buddies. Thank you for being my content buddy today, Kristen. I feel very invigorated, inspired, and ready to start the day. Make sure to hang out with us for another stream, folks. I'm going to be doing these on Thursdays, whether I have a guest or not. I would love if I don't have a guest for you guys to just come by and we can talk content together, right? Like, help me out here, you know? Anyways, hope you guys have a great day and we'll talk soon.
We got the magic. Hey, we got the magic.